Hi guys, welcome back once again to TNT Tutorials. Today I'll be showing you how to use the command VLOOKUP in Microsoft Excel. Now, VLOOKUP is a command used to find a value and see if it exists in another range of values. Now I know that doesn't make much sense or have much relevance yet, but it is especially useful for cleaning up really messy sets of data and make it much easier, not much easier, much more presentable to the average person. So here, for example, I've got a big data set of world development indicators, which can be downloaded from this link here. So it's got all these countries with all their country codes, all these certain indicators on countries' performance in areas such as GDP and CO2 emissions. So again, we've also got this sheet here called CO2 PC, which has all the countries included in this data set, and as well as their CO2 emissions per year. So you got 1990, 1991, 1992, and so forth, all the way up to, let me just set 2014. And then we've also got another sheet down here called GDP PC, which stands for GDP per capita. So once again, with the same set of countries, it's got their GDP per capita from 1990 ranging all the way up to actually 2016. Now, to use VLOOKUP, I'm going to be using the example. I'm going to be doing an example using both these sheets, both GDP per capita and their CO2 emissions per capita. So to do that, we're going to go to this other sheet that's in the dataset called a sample of countries. Now what it has here is it's got all these countries. Um, all the way down, so we've got 122 samples, I think. Yep, seems to be that way. And we've got the country, a column with the country name, a column with the country code, and also a column for the GDP per capita and their CO2 emissions per capita. Now, as you can see, there is only one column for each GDP and CO2 emissions, despite the dataset containing entries from 1990 up to 2014, 2016, etc. So today we're just going to be trying to find that 2014 year. So this is where VLOOKUP becomes very useful, and it's where you can begin to see how useful it is. So if you wanted to quickly find the 2014 value of a country's GDP per capita and CO2 emissions, VLOOKUP can do it for you in a heartbeat. So there are certain things that VLOOKUP needs in order to work, and the first one is the lookup value. So that is a cell that contains the country code. So in the first example here, so for Albania, the country code is ALB. So what it's going to do is it's going to look for that country code on this sheet, then try and find it in, say, this sheet, and then it's going to match it up with the relevant year for GDP. So that's what that one does. So you need the country code, you need the table array. So this is basically the range of data that's going to need to search. So we're going to have to type into the formula, redirect the formula to look not on this sheet, but to look, say, on the GDP sheet when looking for GDP, where we can find the data. The next bit is the column index number, which is the column that contains the data that you want. So it needs to be relative to the table array. So you need to say, in this data set, which is the column we want, which is obviously going to be, for the example's purpose, the 2014 column. And then finally, you need to state the type of match. Now, this is a very simple piece of code. It's either going to be true or false. That's it. So you can either type in true or false, and if you type in true, it means a partial match. You're looking for a partial match. So something close enough, which is not what we want. We want an exact match, which will then, as you'll see, will end up typing false, because that's going to translate to Excel. We want an exact match. We want to exactly match the 2014 GDP per capita for Albania in this cell, not something that's kind of close enough. Now, before we get started on the command, once again, because we are looking for the 2014 year of GDP, we want to find of the range of cells to tell Excel to look for. Now, as I mentioned before, we're going to be redirecting the command to look into this sheet when we're looking for GDP, and to this sheet when we're looking for carbon emissions. So, to 2014 and GDP, we want Excel to look from A2, right? So from A2 all the way to 2014, which is here, so which is AB, and all the way down to our last cell, which is 160. So we're going to be telling Excel to look from A2 to 160 to find our data, to find and match the 2014 year with the relevant country. Right? Very simple. Very, very simple. Once you actually see it, once you visualize on the sheet, then you type it in. So let's get cracking on the command, right? Oh, sorry, before we actually do that, we need to count how many columns are going to be within that range we've given it. So remember, the range is on the GDP per capita sheet, and we're going from A2 to AB 160. Now, how many columns is that? So AB is 2 extra on top of the alphabet, so it's be 28 columns that we're searching within. Because if you put in a number of columns that is less than or greater than the range you've specified, then Excel's just going to freak out and it won't find your number. It won't find and it won't match the relevant value with the relevant country accordingly. So now, we can get cracking on the command. So like all other Excel commands, start with a equal sign and obviously type in VLOOKUP, open your brackets, and like I said before, it's going to ask you for your lookup value, which in this case is going to be the country code, so B2. So there we go. It's looking for, it's going to be searching for ALB. Now we're going to tell where to look for. So in the table array, so press comma to get the table array. We're going to tell where to look for, and remember we want to go send it to the GDP per capita sheet. So we type in GDP per capita exclamation mark to tell it to go to that sheet, and then we're going to type in a $sign, $2. Oops. Because remember that we are going to be searching between A2 and AB160. Now, if you're not familiar with what the $signs do in Excel, I do recommend just giving it a quick Google, just because it is quite a basic function of Excel. But to quickly explain it, all it's going to do is going to hold this command, hold these cells constant once we drag them down the rest. So if you didn't put the $signs in, as you drag the command down, it will change to it will change to like B3. It will just increase by 1 as you drag it down by 1. But by pulling the $signs there, it's just going to hold it constant as you drag the command down the rest of the table. So let's continue with our table array. So remember, we're starting at A2 and we're finishing at AB. So we're going to do $AB and then $160. So that's the finished table array. So that's where. So what this is saying is that it's going to look for a match of B2 on the sheet GDP per capita between the columns A2 and AB 160. Now remember, we counted 28 columns. We counted that this command specifies 28 columns. So we need to tell Excel to look in the 28th column because we want that 2014 year, which is in the 28th column, which is in the AB column. So we just type in 28. Now this is the part where I told you before when it's going to ask us for true or false. And like I said, true is going to try and give you an approximate match, and false is going to give you an exact match. And we want the exact match, so we type in false. And as simple as that, you close your brackets and hit enter, and you should have a value there. So what this is telling me is that Albania's GDP per capita in 2014 is 10701.05. Now to check if we're correct, just remember this value, pop over to your GDP per capita sheet, and you'll see Albania, so the top row, 2014, 10701.05. Which is exactly what we got here. So you notice that with the dollar signs, I put them here, but not at the B2. That's because we want the cell to change. So as we drag it down, we want Excel to try and match DZA with DZA on the GDP per capita sheet, but still within the exact same range. So once we have our command set, we can just get the little black cross here and just drag it all the way down. All the way down to our last one, which should be at Zimbabwe. Cool. And it's going to fill it all in, and you can randomly check these if you like. So let's just check out Tajikistan. So in 2014, their GDP per capita should be 2546.5. So we're going to have to go find it. So in 2014, 2546.5, which is exactly what our VLOOKUP command was able to find. So therefore, if you can do some random checks like that, and they match, then you know you've done your VLOOKUP command correctly. So now we're going to go ahead and do the CO2 emissions per capita for each of these countries, and it's fairly the same process, except there's one thing that's going to differ with this one. Well, if you look at compared to the, I might drag this back. If you compare it to the GDP sheet, the country name is actually, oops, sorry. The country name is actually comes first before the country code. So do you see that? Country name here. So what this means for our command is we don't actually need to include the whole A column in our VLOOK command for to look for the values, right? So remember before when we did the VLOOK command, we started with from A2 to AB160. We can just go from B2 to AB160. However, this does change another part of the command, which I stated was which is the 28, where we said the value is going to be within these 28 columns, and particularly in the 28th column, right? Whereas because we're not including this one, we need to change the 28 just to 27. That's all we need to do. So there also is one more thing we need to watch out for. Is I didn't realize is that this actually has 218 rows of countries or samples of countries compared to the GDP sheet, which only had 160. So that is also something we need to take into account when putting in our formula. Instead of just going from A2 to AB160, we need to go from B2. Sorry, we need to go from B2 to AB218. So let's get cracking on this formula once again, and you'll be able to see the changes compared to the GDP per capita one as we go along here. So once again, equals VLOOKUP, start your brackets, so your lookup value is B2 again, not 22, table array, remember now we're going to the CO2 per capita sheet instead of the GDP per capita sheet, and we're starting off at B2, because we don't need that extra column with the country name, and we're going to AB 218. Remember, because this sheet has a greater sample of countries and a greater amount of data in them. So then once we've set that, remember, because we are not including that first A column, we're starting at B2 instead of A2. We only need 27 columns. If you were to type 28 there, you'll get an error. Then once again, we just finish it off with false, close the brackets, hit enter, and we should have Albania's Albania's CO2 emissions per capita in 2014 were 1.9787. So we can go check that out here. Make sure it's right. So Albania. Yep, 1.978763. So we can just drag it all the way down again. And it should match up all our countries. So once again, we can do a random check. So let's just do Saudi Arabia. CO2 emissions in 2014 were 19.52927. Saudi Arabia. I saw it. Yep, 19.5297. Sorry. And then we can obviously confirm that our VLOOKUP command has worked once again. So thank you very much, guys, for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you learnt how to use VLOOKUP command effectively. If you do have any questions, feel free to leave them below. Yeah, once again, I'll put the link in the description to download this data set if you want to just follow along and give it a try first using this data set. Otherwise, yeah, thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.